Welcome to All In for Estacada Schools. We'll be taking an in-depth look into the work, the data, the wins, and the fun that's happening every day in the Estacada School District. And now, your host, Superintendent Ryan Carpenter.
Hey, welcome to All In on Facebook Live. Thank you so much for joining on this Tuesday afternoon at 4 o'clock. I'm just continually blown away by the success of this communication and this opportunity for me, the superintendent of the Estacada School District, to interact with our parents, our families, as well as the Estacada community at large. This is our third All In for Estacada Schools Facebook Live. It used to be a podcast, and now it's a Facebook Live. I'm just continually blown away. On All In number 1, we had over 700 people view this video communication and interaction. On All In 2, we're just over 600 views now, and I expect this to be a big viewership as well as we talk about the rise and surge of the Omicron variant inside the Estacada School District. Very excited to be here. I hope you all had a restful winter break. We are back to work and we are focused harder than ever to keep our schools open and to serve our kids. So we've got a big day on Facebook Live today. Thank you so much for joining live. If you're joining us later this evening, please continue to watch this and follow the questions as they come in. Our goal is to answer and respond to as many questions as we possibly can. So we got hot topics. We're going to look in the superintendent's email inbox today, as well as we're going to play my favorite part of Facebook Live or All In, and that is fact or fiction, where we take a look and disprove some things that are being said about the Estacada School District out there on social media. So with that said, let's get to the question of the day and let's get to work.
What book is on your nightstand?
Well, I'm sure a lot of people are similar to me. I do love to read. I'm also required to read to be the best superintendent that I can be. So I have multiple books on my bedstand, and I'm reading multiple books at the same time. Right now, about 7 of them. However, that being said, the topic that's on my bedstand right now when it comes to reading is really how to engage a millennial and a Generation Z workforce. As we make transitions in our business from baby boomers and Gen Xers and transition more to millennials and Gen Zers, I want to make sure that the Estacada School District organization is meeting the needs of today's millennial and today's Gen Zer. It's very critical for our community to recruit some of the best talent from around the state and country to come to our great little school district, but it's equally as important that we retain or keep the teachers who do decide to take and invest inside our great little school district. And so right now I'm just studying like crazy to make sure that not only is our school district meeting the needs of the Estacada community at large, because that's our number one priority, of course, but I'm also making sure that our organization is meeting the needs of today's millennial and today's Generation Z as we continue to recruit and retain a transitioning workforce in very, very new educational times that we're in right now. So that's what's on my nightstand. I'm sure you're all reading different page turners than I, but at the end of the day, I want to be the best that I can be, and I want to make this school district the best that it can be for people who are coming in to invest their professional careers here. So that's on my nightstand. Let's get right after it and go to hot topics. Thank you. All right, we've got a couple big hot topics to go to, but first of all, I just want to point out that I'm in a new studio and a new place here located on the district campus. Just again, another shout out to our great communications team. There is no doubt that these things are having a positive impact as we engage with our families. As you all know, because you're tuned into this afternoon, the Estacada School District cares deeply about parent satisfaction. In the last 2 all-in Facebook Lives, it's been wildly successful. And so as this mode of communication continues to grow in popularity and effectiveness, obviously we're going to make improvements to continue to make that climb as well. So excited about this new place. I'm still trying to feel comfortable in here as well. So if I look stiff, it's not natural. It's just in a new spot. So I'll try my best as we go through this process. Hey, there's a lot of changes, and I hope you had the opportunity to watch Super 60 Seconds this Monday, because the state and the Oregon Health Authority and Clackamas County Local Public Health has made some very significant changes very quickly to help school districts stay open, mitigate the big spikes of the Omicron variant, and allowing us to work swiftly and surgically to have fast communication to parents when things change. So you may know now that the isolation period has been reduced from 10 days to 5 days, and this includes adults over the age of 18 as well as children. I last week had a child who tested positive for COVID. The cool thing was we were able to identify a positive test with COVID. We were able to isolate for 5 days, and my child is in compliance with all of the laws, rules, and school policies, and was back to school again this Monday. So from a parent perspective, I'm very pleased to see these isolations reduced, allowing my child and all kids to get back to school on campus with their friends and with our great teachers to keep that great learning going. Another big change is quarantine has been reduced from 10 days down to 5 days. And this is also very important. If a child was exposed outside of the school grounds, so this is exposure that did not occur at school, it occurred either over winter break, at a birthday party, slumber party, etc., at someone else's house, they are required to, if they've been directly exposed, they need to quarantine for 5 days. This is also excellent because it gets kids back in school quickly, and it impacts the families less in terms of having to make daycare and or supervision arrangements. So very excited about that, and I just want to continue to communicate that. The next thing I really want to talk about is just the big changes of keeping kids in school. So this is called the Test to Stay program, or Test to Stay guidance. And it's very important that we're all on the same page in terms of what this means. So if your child is at school, let's say they're in an elementary school classroom, or they're in their 4th period honors English class. If a child in the honors English class tests positive and your child was within that quarantine window of 6 feet or less and less than, and in a mass situation for 15 minutes or longer, if they're inside that window, in the olden days, we had to send your child home for 10 days. In the new days, the 5-day quarantine applies. However, if you elect as a parent to allow the Estacada School District on day 1 of learning that your child was exposed, we can conduct a PCR test, which is a very minimally invasive test. So it's basically like a Q-tip at the bottom end of the nostril. So it's not that one that we all think of that like touches our brain. That's not the one that we're doing. This is just a little Q-tip swab. The kid themselves actually takes the test, and then we put it in there, and in 15 minutes we can tell if your child is positive or negative with COVID. If they test negative in the Test to Stay process, they can go right back to class. Very important. And then 3 days later, we would conduct the same test. And ultimately, if the child tests negative, then we're good to go. We're continuing to monitor for symptoms, but they're continuing in class. If they test positive, then we go to that 5-day isolation process. So I hope this is helpful for you. I know that early on in the pandemic, I received a lot of emails with concern of, don't you dare test my child type of language. And I want to let you know then, and I'm still going to let you know now, that the Estacada School District will not conduct a COVID test without parent permission. And so we've been pretty effective with that. We're sending text messages, we're making phone calls, and sending emails. Your child will just stay in our isolation room until we either get permission from you to take that test, or if you choose to deny that test, which is entirely up to you, it's parent choice, then we'll just wait for you to come and pick up your kid to where they'll have to quarantine for 5 days like everybody else. So I hope that clarifies. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. It's actually very complex, and huge praise to our building principals, vice principals, our classroom teachers, our specialists, and our certified nursing assistants. And the people that are underappreciated right now in this entire process is our building secretaries. They are the frontline workers, helping us move fast, efficiently, communicating with our families, and trying to disrupt the educational process, limit disruption in the educational process as much as possible. So very proud of our people. I'm proud of what the Estacada School District is doing, and I'm very hopeful that us as a team being on the same page will allow us to continue to stay focused on student learning and try to make some of these rapid changes less of a distraction for our schools and our families. The other hot topic that I do want to discuss just very shortly is athletic events, specifically high school athletic events. So as you're seeing around the state, there's a lot of school districts that are choosing to limit people who are watching high school athletic games. They are choosing to limit access to those games, and they're starting to even cancel games due to Omicron outbreak and other various policy changes that school districts are making. I want to make this very clear. The Estacada School District is committed and entirely focused on allowing our winter high school athletes in wrestling and boys and girls basketball to continue participating in their season. We'll take on anybody, anywhere in the state of Oregon, and we'll host anybody from anywhere to play some games. We truly believe this is a very important aspect of a child's education, is to be a part of these athletic competitions and a part of these athletic teams. So I want you to hear first and foremost from your superintendent that the Estacada School District is planning to move and proceed forward with our winter sports season. Some of our neighboring districts are choosing to limit how many people can come into the gym space, and I completely understand where they're coming from, and I empathize with the difficulty of that decision. At this point, the Estacada School District wants to continue to keep our buildings for any and all who want to come in and support their child, their grandchild, their neighbor, and just flat root on the Rangers because we love the Estacada Rangers so much. We intend to keep our doors open and allowing anyone to come in and support our team. However, the reason why I'm kind of building this up is I need your help. One of the requirements that we need to improve on, so the state law and the governor's orders require any person inside an indoor facility is required to wear a face mask. Now, as the Omicron variant rises inside the Estacada community, and as we're doing literally everything we can to make sure that our schools remain open, I need help from our parents and our community members. I know that wearing a mask is not always the most popular thing to do. I know that in our community, it's really a 60-40 split in terms of mask wearing versus anti-mask wearing. I'm very attuned to our community's belief in the masking system and where kids should be when it comes to the masking system. But regardless of your personal opinions and or your personal objectives, I need your help, and we, Estacada High School, needs your help, that if you do choose to attend a home wrestling match and or a girls or boys basketball game, please wear your mask while indoors. One of the things that can get the Estacada School District in trouble and could ultimately lead to our teams forfeiting games and canceling seasons is the Estacada's community's inability to follow the guidelines of our indoor spaces from the state of Oregon. And so, again, we intend to keep our schools going. We intend to keep our sports moving in those directions, and we want our kids to have those opportunities. It's really a simple ask, but as you come into next Monday or Tuesday's home events, we will be upping our reminders to families and adults and kids who are present to wear their masks while watching the game. If you can just be a team player on that, we'd greatly appreciate it. We know some will do it under protest. We know some will attempt to flat out just resist that, and we'll work with that individual at the time and on that space. But we sure would love for you to be a part of our team and be a team player and wear that mask for those games. I certainly, and the school board would certainly surely appreciate that as we move forward together. So those are the two hot topics, isolation and quarantine, and a favor I'm asking of our parents and our community as they watch indoor sporting events right now to wear that mask. Maggie, I am sure questions are starting to roll in, and again, the whole purpose of All In on Facebook is to have a back and forth conversation with each other. And so Maggie, help me out, and what questions are coming in, and how can we get started?
Thank you, Superintendent Carpenter. I want to first say that we have our possibly largest audience yet on All In Live, so I want to welcome all of you, and thank you for joining with us. We don't have any questions yet. We did have one submitted via the inbox earlier about will we be experiencing school closures as other schools in our area do close, and is that due to staffing shortages? I don't know if you want to touch on that now or if you want to go into your inbox, Superintendent Carpenter.
Yeah, I can briefly touch on that. It is the number one theme that's coming through my emails right now as well. And I can tell you that it is the intention of the Estacada School District to stay open as long as we can. And the only thing that would affect our operations is either so many bus drivers calling in sick that we can't operate and run buses, or so many classroom teachers or employees who work directly with our students in supervision capacities that would require us to have to make some changes. At this point today, subject to change tomorrow, but at this point today, I am not worried about the Estacada School District needing to close anytime in the near future, and I'll share data about that real soon. Great question. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Maggie, is there anything else, or should we move into the inbox?
Yeah, we've had a couple more questions pop up. Thank you. Our next question is an exposure during a sporting event considered an in-school exposure?
The Estacada School District is treating that exposure in an athletic event like an in-school exposure. There is some gray language on how best to handle that. At this moment, we're going to treat it like an in-school exposure. So the student is available to test to stay. We might increase their mask usage while participating in athletics, but not in the exercise way. I understand the safety concerns with wearing a mask while playing sports. That's not what I mean. But just increasing mask usage while on the bus, while in the locker room, etc. But if our data tells us that that system is not working for us and our sports seasons are in jeopardy because so many kids are becoming infected by Omicron, then we would probably treat it differently. But at this point, we want to treat it just like we would an in-school exposure because that's a school-sponsored event, if that makes sense. We're in control of that.
All right, thank you. Our next question is a little bit of a tricky one. I know there's a lot of clarifiers on this. So for quarantine, what is considered fully vaccinated now that we have boosters in play? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a very great question. And actually, just an hour ago, I received an update on the definition of fully vaccinated. And so I appreciate the question, and I'm excited to take my best attempt to clarify this question. So up until a week ago, fully vaccinated meant the 2 doses plus 14 days. That individual, doesn't matter if they were an adult or not, was declared fully vaccinated. Last Wednesday, I think it was, the state of Oregon made a new definition and declaration that fully vaccinated means that an individual over the age of 18 years old has received both vaccination shots and the booster. So the booster for an adult 18 years and up is now the status of being fully vaccinated. Now, this affects our school district in the following ways. First and foremost, obviously, we still have several employees over the age of 18 years old that has not received the booster shot yet. And so if they are in direct exposure to the Omicron variant, they also have to participate in our test to stay process. So we're going to start having teachers, bus drivers, paraeducators, secretaries, etc., doing the same thing, test to stay, that our kids are doing because they have yet to receive the booster. Fully vaccinated for a kid under the age of 18 does not require the booster yet. And so if they've received both shots plus 14 days, then a child under the age of 18 is considered fully vaccinated. So I hope that helps clarify. I actually just got that update about 2 hours ago. And so now there are two definitions for fully vaccinated, one for adults and one for children. Great question. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarifier. Our next question comes from someone that is new to the district. We just want to say welcome. We're so glad you're here. Their question was that they're concerned about seeing students that are not wearing their masks and want to know what disciplinary action is in place for students that are not following mask rules.
Yeah, that's a great question. And any observation of our school system over the course of a typical 8 to 10 hour day, you'll see several mask infractions throughout the day. And to some extent, I understand it because it's kids being kids. And other times I understand it because there's just different things that occur where an adult employee or a child chooses to remove their mask for a moment. I will tell you when the question is about discipline, there is law and guidance that we're required to follow from the Department of Education that we're actually not allowed to discipline and or punish any student for some type of mask infraction. And so by no means does the Estacada School District, or really any other school district in the state of Oregon, do anything punitive to a child who either has made a mistake or is just outright choosing to be a little bit more complicated on a specific day due to their mask choice and mask usage. I got to give credit to our employees and our building principals and vice principals, our teachers. We are constantly reminding, we're constantly re-educating. At the end of the day, we love these kids. We want these kids to be successful, and we want these kids to be here in our schools. And so it has worked to our favor just to be reminding, to be re-educating, and to be reminding again. Now, there does come a point in time, and we've had at least 3 of these occasions so far, primarily at the high school level, where students and students who may be supported by their parents to try to make a political statement or a political stand that, I am not going to wear the mask and you are not going to make me. And we've worked with each of those individual kids and their parents through that process. None of it is easy. We understand where the parents are coming from. Most parents understand where we're coming from. But at the end of the day, if we do have to do some consequences for kids for not wearing masks, it's not because they're not wearing masks. At some point, it becomes insubordination. And that's the route that we go through when it becomes a real problem. But our kids have been very receptive to reminders. Our adults, employees have been receptive to reminders, and our parents have been awesome team players. So it's never perfect. It's always a work in progress. And the Estacada School District statistically can prove that what we're doing, even with minor mask infractions, we are limiting the spread on campus. And I'm very proud of that. And that's a whole community that is achieving those great results. So great question. I know it was a long answer, but that was a great question that I wanted to touch the full spectrum of. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Superintendent Carpenter. And our next question, another masking question and concern. There some reports of people that may not be wearing masks outside at parent pickup time or on the playground or anything like that. Have we thought about implementing an on-campus masking policy?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Those conversations do come up. Typically, they come up when the virus surges, both in the state of Oregon and inside the Estacada community. What the Estacada School District is really focused on is following the guidelines. We have never broken from the guidelines. We've continued to follow all laws and all policies and all recommendations from the Department of Education and the Oregon Health Authority. And so even though we have discussed different masking options, at the end of the day, the Oregon Health Authority, the CDC, and the Department of Education allows that any child and or adult who is in an outside setting, a mask is recommended, however, not required. And so our school district is going to continue to follow the letter of those recommendations. And if the state and or CDC makes different policy moves, then the Estacada School District will change as well to reflect those. And so the conversations do come up. I'm actually impressed with the amount of people who do choose to continue wearing their face mask while outside in Estacada. But at the end of the day, we believe in parent choice. We believe in student choice to some extent, and as long as we're in compliance with the rules, we're okay with both kids and families making the choice that's right for them, as long as it falls within compliance of the rules. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Superintendent Carpenter. Another follow-up question is, do we anticipate mask guidelines changing for having students allowed to not wear masks at recess?
Yeah, good question. I am hearing nothing from the state level at this moment about any changes to masking or mask guidelines. Right now, it's my understanding that if a student is outside while on the playground, it is optional if a child wants to wear a mask or not. That's the rule of the guidelines, and we're following those rules to the best of our ability, or at least allowing the option to wear masks or not. So outside on the playground, it is optional, and inside it is mandatory, and we're following those rules.
All right, it looks like that is our last question at this time. I want to thank everyone that has asked those thoughtful questions, and keep them coming. If you have a question, someone else probably does as well. So we always appreciate the opportunity to answer those questions. Superintendent Carpenter, those are all the questions at this time.
Awesome. Thanks for all those who are joining. I can't see how many are on or who's even asking the questions. I'm just staring at a video camera, but I'm so thankful that you're here. I think you're going to like this next segment. You get to dive into my email inbox and get to hear the number one theme of the things that I'm spending a lot of my time working with families and responding to in our community at large. So Josh, take it away. Let's go dive into my emails. So we really liked the email thing in our podcast, and so we're bringing it to you today. And it starts with data. So last week I received, on the first week back from winter break, I received 1,003 emails and averaged roughly 201 emails per day. My average response time to our community and parents who emailed me was 10 hours and 7 minutes. My goal is to be within 24 hours, so I'm pleased with last week's response time. Emails come in all the time, and so I'm trying my best to provide good customer service and to make sure that those who do choose to email their superintendent do get a timely response. So thank you to the 1,003 of you who emailed me, and I hope that I was able to respond back in a quicker time. So in this segment, I want to talk about the number one theme that came through my emails last week, and that was keeping schools open, which was one of the first questions that came in our All In Facebook Live today. I'm getting two different types of email strands about keeping schools open. There is a coalition of people who are going to different websites and filling out their name and address and then a template email is created, and it is auto-populated to myself as well as the executive school board of directors. We're starting to see an influx of that, so some people are joining groups out there somewhere and emailing their school board and superintendent. I just want to let you know that those emails are reaching us, and we're reading the same email multiple times, and we just appreciate your advocacy for kids and keeping schools open. I'm also receiving emails individually from people who are just advocating to make sure that Estacada stays open and keeps serving its kids. And I greatly appreciate that. And so here's some things I want to share with you, because we're starting to see school districts around the metro area start to shutter their doors. I noticed yesterday the Forest Grove School District closed middle school and high school, I believe. And I saw that today Tigard Tualatin, I think, closed some middle schools and high schools. I think you can expect to see more of that in communities around us as this virus surges. So what about the Estacada School District? Will we potentially close? Well, my answer to that is yes, we could. We could potentially close if our positivity rate gets so high that we no longer have the adult staff to function. But there's a lot of things that need to happen before we get to that stage. And right now, today, we're not even close to that. So here's some data I wanted to share with all of you, who I will call our all-in Facebookers, because I appreciate you're all in to learn a little bit more and get deeper into the school district. So right now, since post-winter break, our employee attendance rate, only 5.8% is what we're averaging on a daily basis of our employees are calling in sick, either due to COVID, due to sickness, or other okay time that they're allotted via their contract. And so right now, roughly 6% will round up are calling in sick. That is actually quite normal. That's not abnormal. On most given days, between 4 and 6% is a typical day in the Estacada School District. And really on Fridays, or as we get closer to 3-day weekends, that actually hovers more to 9%, 10%, and we're able to execute our operations with minimal impactivity. Another data point that I think is important is right now in the Estacada School District, only 19 students have tested positive, and this is data from today. So this is the most recent, although we know that kids will be testing positive really throughout this process. But right now there are 19 kids with positive, and there are 9 employees who have tested positive. We currently have 39 students who are in quarantine, and we have 1 employee for quarantine. So our staffing levels right now do not indicate a need for the Estacada School District to start to worry at this point about school closure. What I am worried about, that I want to make you aware of, is our substitute fill rate. That is something that worries me greatly. So as you know, if an employee, let's call it a classroom teacher, calls in sick, we need someone that's licensed to fill their spot to act as our guest teacher, or you would call it substitute teacher, on that specific day. Last week, our substitute fill rate was 44%. So what that means is, let's say 10 teachers called in sick, which didn't happen, but this is for easy math's sake. 10 teachers call in sick, only 4 of them were covered by substitutes. Now, how this impacts our system is that now requires everybody that's on campus to cover for that unfilled substitute. And so if it's at the high school, teachers are typically given a 1-period rest period, prep period, or an opportunity to just gather themselves, go to the bathroom in some extents. Well, now we're hoping that during their break period, they're going to step in and cover for another teacher. Our principals and vice principals are spending half their days in the classroom. Our guidance counselors are stepping in. People from the district office, including myself, are stepping in to cover holes. And so that's going to continue to happen. And so it's important to note that Your child's teacher may be out one day, and the superintendent might be their substitute teacher. Right now, it's kind of an all hands on deck experience as we try to just cover to make sure that we're able to successfully operate schools. Paraeducator subrate is even worse. These are the people who help support the teachers in the classroom. They're the extra adults in the classroom. They're serving students with very significant special education needs. Right now, that fill rate is at 26%. And so if 10 paraeducators are calling out sick, really 2.5 are being filled, and those are not being covered by the district. And so some people's kids who are dependent upon this special help are not receiving it. And that again falls back on our classroom teachers and our principals and vice principals. And so I want to let you know that we're closely monitoring our employee attendance rate, and we're closely monitoring our substitute rate, because if there's any reason why we would have to close schools, it's not because of what kids are doing, it's because of our ability to staff adults to safely conduct a school day. And so we're going to be monitoring that daily. At this point, I feel good with where we're at. A 44% sub rate is not sustainable all year long, and so our human resources team is working hard to try to get more of that fill rate. By the way, 44% was last week. Our overall sub rate for the year is 64%. So 44% was our worst week last week, 64% overall for the year. And so if you are a licensed person who might be willing to come and help out our team, we sure could use some good substitutes to help us out. The state has made some changes that you don't even need a degree in teaching to substitute. And so if you're one of those people looking to find a way to help the school district right now, we need help in substitutes. Maybe you're a mom working from home, or a grandma, or someone who's just recently retired. There's a lot of different demographics I'm reaching out to right now. And we sure need help in the substitute ranks. Substitute cooks, substitute custodians, substitute bus drivers, substitute teachers, and substitute paraeducators. So I hope that you'll answer the call that we need help covering for our people as the Omicron surges through our school district. And so I do not intend to close. We are building plans that if we did have to close, we would limit the disruption to education. We're getting pretty good at moving back and forth to fluid to virtual learning, but that's not what we want to do. So I'm confident we can stay open. We're monitoring our attendance rate, and we really, really need help in substitutes. And that's a long version of my response to the emails that are coming into my inbox. So that is the superintendent's inbox. Are there any verbal questions, Maggie, or verbal emails that I can respond to now? Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Superintendent Carpenter. Really good information there, and I know that is a challenge we are facing. We did have one question, and you answered it briefly about non-licensed substitutes filling in for staff because Oregon has changed the requirements. So as Superintendent Carpenter said, at this point, the changes have been made that you need a high school diploma and the ability to pass a background check. And then the district has the opportunity to potentially sponsor you. So if you are interested in going down that route, you would meet with human resources in the district, and you could potentially be a substitute teacher for our district. So there are a lot of great opportunities out there.
Yeah, give us a call. We really need you. So if you're available to help, we'll take you right now, however we can get you, because the more help allows our schools to stay open, and the more that we can continue to follow the guidelines will also allow our schools and our sports to continue as we're doing right now. So that's the email inbox. Keep those questions coming, and let's move on to my personal favorite part of our All-In, and that's Fact or Fiction. So let's get onto social media and let's see what's out there for us. Okay, so fact or fiction, that's a fun one. So I want to thank our communications team. We're always staying active on social media because, again, the Estacada School District, as we transform our mission and vision and values to better reflect what our community, be the school district that our community wants us to be, we want to make sure that we're telling our story. We don't want people telling our story for us. And so communication is so critical. And so one of the posts that we found just this week on Facebook was from, I think, a parent, maybe used to be a parent, but this post was, quote, "The school lockdown was due to," we had a school lockdown last week, "The school lockdown was due to a student shooting near Clackamas River and police responded to the school." That is extremely false. So if you saw that post or responded to that post, please know that that's not at all what happened to initiate our protocol procedures of a lockdown. So what really did happen was Clackamas River, a couple of adults were outside of Clackamas River and they heard what sounded like one gunshot or backfire or something up in the neighborhood around Clackamas River Elementary School. Our adults who heard that sound reported it to the principal. The principal reported that to the district office, and it was at that time we decided, out of abundance of caution, to just lock our outside doors or move into what we call a lockout protocol. Now, I made the decision to lock out the other 3 buildings as well because, as you know, our campus, which is an awesome campus atmosphere, everything is so close together that if we lock out one building, it makes logical sense to lock everything else out too, just because of the proximity of where our buildings are. And so we heard a loud boom. We made a decision to just lock our external doors. Teachers were still teaching. Everything was going on normal inside. We just locked the exterior doors. Thanks to your support and the financial investment of our school board of directors, we have a full-time school resource officer. We're one of the few districts left that believe in having a full-time school resource officers, and we're going to continue that. Our school resource officer was on campus doing his usual duties. Because we heard this suspicious sound, we sent our school resource officer to the direction of the sound. It was later determined that it was a backfire from a ATV or car out in the neighborhood. And really within 20 minutes, we unlocked all of our schools and did normal operations. And so if you hear that a student had a gun or was shooting or there was any type of shooting whatsoever, that is fake news. We just did that out of abundance of caution. And I want you to know this, if you're watching this evening, both live and tonight. If the Estacada School District receives any type of credible threat, all parents would be notified. That's our policy, that's our protocols, and in order for us to be as safe as we can be, we need everybody to know these things so that we're all on the same page and looking for the same threats. And so, I received several emails during the National School Shooter Day, and why weren't we closing down, and how dare we, keep our schools going when such a thing was going on. And again, the reason why the Estacada School District conducted its operations as it was is because we did not receive and or have any information of local credible threats. And we look very diligently for that. We partner very closely with our families. And so if a threat were to occur, you can count on us to immediately partner with you. No different than you immediately got a text message that our school was going into lockout, and you immediately got a text message that it was completed. Just like you got the text messages that we needed to close our schools down because of the power outage, which thank you very much, by the way. That was a very well-oiled handoff of our kids in the middle of the day back to home. It took 2 hours and 45 minutes for roughly 1,800 students to be reunified back with their families and or in a safe spot. That's impressive. I'm very pleased with our school district and our response to safety. So hopefully that helps. If you see that post or if you're a part of that post, please tell that story for us, the right story. This one is fiction. So fact or fiction, I think we did a good job there. Maggie, it's time to take any and all questions. I'm here to serve you today. How can I help?
Thank you, Superintendent Carpenter. Our first question, it looks like, is if schools did transition to virtual learning, would sports continue or would they pause as well?
I believe that it's our intention to keep the sports going. Obviously, different scenarios will require different decisions from the district. But like I said before, the reason why we would close is because we don't have the staffing capacity to conduct school. That's different. So if the coach isn't impacted by COVID in this circumstance, then we have the resources to keep running basketball and or wrestling. And so our intention, the only reason why we would close is because we don't have the capacity to run whatever that specific thing is. And so I guess I should make it clear, and I appreciate that question. The Estacada School District, I don't think through this surge will ever shut down the entire district. We would only do that if not enough middle school personnel showed up, so we'd shut down the middle school until we were able to get it back up and operational. Maybe the boys basketball team has an outbreak, and so we've got to shut down the boys basketball team, but then get them going again. And so we're going to handle each situation uniquely as it comes, but it's really more of a capacity issue with our employees to make sure that we can staff it. So that will be how we treat all closures. So I would like to think we're going to keep athletics going if we had to close something else, if that makes sense.
Our next question is kind of a concern. They're wondering why the east side parking lot of the high school by the gym and Orchid Health is dark, and if we've looked into options for lighting that area for student safety.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. And that's one of the things that our community is bringing up to us. And so what we've learned is that one of our poles has been damaged, I think either due to wind or some other weather factor. And that one specific pole that's damaged is connected electricity to the other lights in that east parking lot. We are on the waiting list for PGE. This is out of our control. This is a PGE thing. We're on the waiting list for PGE to come out and fix that pole. I know that Estacada has a lot of PGE employees, so hey, if you're watching this, tap on the shoulder of a PGE person to say, hey, we need your help. We do need to get that area lit. It's a safety thing. We haven't actually had a conversation about what we could do in the interim, and so that's a very good question. And after this, I'm going to speak to our Executive Director of Operations, and we will talk about temporary strategies to make sure that upper parking lot is safe while our kids enter and exit practices up there. I know it's a very important parking lot for our school district. So thank you for that question. And this is the reason why those lights don't work right now.
All right, thank you. And it looks like our last question right now, unless we have any last minute ones roll in,
keep them coming.
If that's the case, keep them coming. This is a fun one. We know that the school board of directors recently approved the installation of a turf field in our school district. Do we have an update on how that process is going?
Yeah, it's going well. Right now, we're going through, I would say, the less fun parts of the project, and that's going through permitting and getting all of our engineering and seismic work done. And so 2 weeks ago, we had a crew out, and they were taking soil samples and digging deep into the ground to make sure that everything that was under there was safe and ethical to remove. We're taking all of that information so that we can begin our big permitting. Obviously, to remove as much earth as we're required to do, because our football stadium is kind of like a big hump that it's going to require a little bit of Army Corps of Engineer approval, DEQ approval, and some various permittings. And so we've hired a company to help us with that process, and right now it's all about permitting. We do hope to break ground, and you'll actually start seeing some construction happen sometime around March is our hope. So we still have an aggressive and ambitious goal. that our graduating class of 2022 gets an opportunity to walk across the turf. That's ambitious, but at this point, we are still optimistic that we can hit that deadline. So good things are happening, and we're committed to get that done, but we're also committed to doing it right, so that we don't have to do it again and or do anything that could impact its safety, its warranty, and our investment, our long-term investment into that field. So great turf field question. Thank you.
All right, a couple more questions have come in.
Great.
What is our protocol for sexual harassment in our schools?
That's a big question. It starts with policy JFCF. I would encourage you to go on to our website and look at that policy. Once you've read policy JFCF, I would encourage you to look at policy JFCF-AR. That is how our school district investigates and enforces the sexual harassment procedures. These are things that all school buildings and leaders have been trained upon heavily. All of our employees have been trained on how to identify and support or combat the behavior of sexual harassment. But at the end of the day, all of the processes that the school district is legally obligated and required to follow and enforce is in policy JFCF. So without knowing specific details, that's where I would lead you to, because that's ultimately the playbook that the school district uses to investigate and enforce sexual harassment.
Right, thank you. And we are linking that policy now for anyone that's watching and might want a little bit more information on that. And of course, we welcome reports at any time. So it looks like that is we have one more question. What are our consequences for sexual harassment? And that might need some policy reference, but Superintendent Carpenter, if you're able to shed any more light on that.
Sure. The simple answer to that is it depends, and it depends on its severity. And so if it occurs with kid on kid, and it goes through our student discipline process, there's a very laborious process where parents are involved, investigations happen, and consequences up to including expulsion are divvied out. And then it's a similar response, adult on adult or employee on employee. Obviously, a few different interactions take place at the district level with different adults, but at the same time, those consequences could be up to and including termination. So it depends on the severity, it depends on the facts, and it depends on the circumstances. But at the end of the day, that policy, JFCF, is how we equitably and equally enforce our response to any complaints regarding sexual harassment.
All right, thank you, Superintendent Carpenter. And it looks like those are all of our questions at this time. I want to thank everyone that has asked all of these great questions and everyone that has tuned in. Again, if you're tuning in later, feel free to pop those questions in the comment section as well, and we will get back to you as soon as we can.
Thank you so much, Maggie, and our communications team, and ultimately thank you, one, for being brave enough to stand in front of your video screen and or your phone for 50 some odd minutes to just interact with me and learn more about your school district. Hey, this thing is titled All In, and so this is a deep dive. We've got a fire hose and we're shooting it at you so that you can be the best parent, the most informed parent, and the most informed with what our school district is working through when it comes to big decisions. I greatly appreciate your time. I hope this is helpful as our school district tries to transparently communicate to our families how we're processing these hot topic decisions, some that are out of our control and some that are in our control. And so the only way that our school district can continue to move towards greatness is if we do it together. So I'm Ryan Carpenter. I proudly serve as your superintendent. I can't wait to see the comments that come in for those who do watch this video later. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks for All In number 4. Thanks for watching.